Professore, questa notte elettorale qui alla John Cabot University è particolarmente vivace, che cosa significa?
Che c'è un grande interesse, che è una elezione molto particolare, senza precedenti nella storia degli Stati Uniti. Ci sono state altre elezioni così, diciamo, radicalizzate, con due candidati molto diversi tra di loro, ma mai con una differenza anche di approccio e di formazione e preparazione dell'elezione, perché Trump è praticamente in campagna elettorale da 10 anni, mentre Kamala Harris da soli 3 mesi, quindi abbiamo una grande differenza e per la prima volta chi vince conta, cioè non è vero che non c'è tanta differenza tra i presidenti americani e queste elezioni le stanno dimostrando.
Perché queste elezioni rappresentano un punto di svolta per la politica americana e per la politica mondiale?
Perché la politica mondiale, veniamo da una pandemia drammatica, tragica, 2 guerre in atto, altre minacciate, diciamo è un momento di grande tensione e di transizione e tutto sommato la politica americana lo dimostra, perché avevamo prima 2 candidati anziani, prima nelle elezioni di 4 anni fa quasi ottantenni, adesso uno ottantenne, l'altro quasi pure, che invece appunto uno ha lasciato e si sta tornando, sembrerebbe, a una concezione della politica americana come una politica che guarda al futuro e che è progressista, che si va trasformando da sé, che invece non sembrava più essere il caso fino all'abbandono di Biden a luglio. Quindi da questo punto di vista ci sono grandi aspettative nell'uno e nell'altro senso, perché un ritorno di Trump significherebbe un ritorno a una politica di liberismo e di alte tariffe all'interno degli Stati Uniti sui prodotti importati, significherebbe una distrazione dall'Europa, noi qui in Europa dovremmo stare attenti a questo, significherebbe forse anche un abbandono o perlomeno un maggiore disinteresse dell'Ucraina, insomma, mentre con Harris c'è molto da vedere e da imparare, perché non sappiamo poi esattamente, diciamo, ancora, questa è un po' la sua debolezza, è un personaggio che non è stato messo a fuoco completamente.
Perfetto, professore, grazie.
Grazie a voi.
I'm going to pass the mic to Professor Daniele Fiorentino, who is an expert of American history and a professor at Roma Tre.
Thank you. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. Actually, I've been here several times. I started coming in this building when I was a little kid. There used to be a Jewish school in this place, and that's where I went in elementary school. So it's always a pleasure to be back here. Good evening, everybody. We are talking about the strangest elections ever in United States history. I teach history, so that's where I start from. Consider the 2 candidates, the 2 major candidates. We have someone who's been campaigning for 10 years, thereabouts, and has won an election, has lost another one. We don't know about the current one, with a lot of liabilities, as you were saying earlier, that people know very well and know what to expect from him. On the other side, there is a candidate who started campaigning 3 months ago. Very short lead. On the one hand, some observers say, well, that's an advantage. Others say, no, it's not. We don't know. And we don't know. That's why it's so difficult. And, polls are not reliable, because polls are guesses based on what people declare publicly, and very often people don't say what they're voting, and this is the case, I believe, this time around for both candidates. There are some people who are embarrassed to say that they're voting for Trump and don't make that, an open statement, and people who instead don't want to say that they're voting for Kamala Harris, maybe for some reasons, as some of the women in the Democratic Party said, and I don't remember who it was, actually don't vote like your husbands, yes. Right? And in the secret of the ballot, you're free to vote whatever you please, and you can vote for a woman. Now, there is a factor, I think, in this election that didn't work out, that many people expected in the elections of 2016 with Hillary Clinton. She was the one claiming, we are going to break the glass ceiling, things are going to change for women, yet she didn't manage to gather the vote of women as much as I believe Kamala Harris is doing this time around. So there are major differences between the two candidates, and we had this very clear when, on the way that Trump reacted when Kamala Harris became the candidate of the Democratic Party. It was pretty clear that it was taken off guard, basically. He didn't expect, his team had prepared a campaign basically centered on Biden's weaknesses. And all of a sudden, and in fact he was quite irritated, because all of a sudden he finds himself competing with a woman who's much younger than he is, who has a lot of knowledge about politics, who has an experience as prosecutor, as attorney general, this was not in plans. And it was pretty clear that Trump was embarrassed, especially in the first phase of Kamala Harris's campaign. So we are seeing, you're young, you're seeing an election that has no precedent in American history. There were several close elections in US history. If we don't go too far back in the past, in 2000, between Al Gore, George W. Bush, it was 270 to 226, if I remember well. And yet, and Gore, as it is the case, it has been the case, we have also to keep this in mind, in the past elections, in the past several elections, the Democrats usually win the popular vote, but they lose the electoral vote. And this is a peculiarity typical of the United States, on which several scholars have debated. There is a famous book I always recommend to my students that is entitled How Democratic is the American Constitution by Robert Dahl. I recommend it. It's very interesting. It gives you a sense on how peculiar the American elections are. My Italian students always wonder, why can't you elect the candidate that is most voted by the people? But that's part of the implant that the founding fathers had devised in order to avoid a direct democracy or a too liberal state or the mob could somehow endanger the stability of the political spectrum. And so the famous checks and balances were devised for that purpose, and they have a reason. But on the other hand, they are giving sometimes, as it was the case, probably the most significant paradox, let's say, in American elections, in the elections of 2016, when Trump lost by a large margin the popular vote and instead managed to win the electoral one. So it's very hard to make forecasts, of course, in this situation. Very hard because it's a first time, very hard because you never know. You study history, you study the past in order to try, at least try. I'm not saying that you understand the present if you study the past, but maybe you have a little, of a clue on some issues. And I think that there are several issues that can favor an election of Trump, like the economy. The economy is something that Trump has been insisting upon for a long time, although actually probably the Biden's administration wasn't so good at promoting its economic policy, which has been quite successful overall. There is the unemployment has gone down, inflation now is has lessened. It's not as sweeping, as strong as it was a couple of years ago, but the impression Americans have is different. And to what extent, that's the big question, Kamala Harris managed to give a sense of, innovation, of difference to the American elect voters. That's the big question mark. And how effective was she during the campaign? I mean, did she manage to hit? Because, you know, very often you have to consider this in elections, and I'm not speaking just about the American elections, but in general, in elections, imagination and expectation among the voters counts much more than what we usually assume. It's true that there is the economy, of course. There is a very important issue, which is abortion right now, you know, and the repeal of Roe versus Wade of 1973. There are several issues that count, but I think what's really going to make a difference, and for this reason, we can maybe start foreseeing the possibility of Harris' victory, is that a lot of women, I believe, are going to the polls. And there were appeals, even today, there still are appeals in the United States for women to go to the polls, because it's pretty clear that this time it's also a gender issue that is dividing American electors. And I think in the coming days we'll see the results, also because I don't think we'll have a result by tomorrow. Unfortunately, I would say, but it will take time. And it's interesting, this has been the case in the past elections. I mean, little by little, we've, you know, I remember when I was young, usually by the following morning, we knew what was happening and what the turnout was and the results, but we'll have to wait a while to see what comes. Thank you.